Kia ora, good evening. Environment Southland has rejected a request from Invercargill City Council to help fund infrastructure for the inaugural A to B yacht race from Auckland to Bluff being held in February. City Council yesterday submitted on Environment Southland's draft annual plan asking for $180,000 for infrastructure at Bluff. Councillors considered whether the request met funding criteria and several said they supported the concept, but most expressed reservations about the lack of detail in the application. Environment Southland Chair Ali Timms abstained from the vote. Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt says the outcome wasn't a surprise and City Council was prepared for this decision. He says the race will definitely go ahead, and we spoke to him after the submission yesterday about what funding options might be.
Well, there's always a plan B, and we can look at our private companies such as Holdco, other private sector companies that have a proud history of contributing to local events and activities such as the SBS. But why we target the regional council is that they own around 75% shares of Southport. And we can't have an event such as a yacht race without the cooperation and support of the Southport.
Race promoter Murray Francis could not be contacted for comment this afternoon. In the South last Friday, he said there was a plan B, and it was the organisers' job to help find the $380,000 contribution needed from Southland for the event.
Well, we have to find it. We have to source money. That's our job, really. We've come up with the concept, and we just have to come up with it. We have to fund it. So that's our job.
So you're saying there's no way that if you couldn't get the funding from where you were hoping to, that the event wouldn't not go ahead?
Well, the events are always in danger of not going ahead. It's like the films that we've done down here. You know, in World's Fastest Indian, a major funder dropped out 2 weeks before the film started, but we went ahead nevertheless. So everything is it's a card game, really, isn't it?
Invercargill Police issued numerous tickets and warnings to people using cell phones while driving in the first 2 weeks of May. Police focused on cell phone use in the first 12 days of May, issuing more than 20 infringements as well as warning drivers. It's been illegal to use a cell phone while driving since late 2009, with those caught doing so facing an $80 fine and 20 demerit points. Invercargill Strategic Traffic Unit Team Leader, Senior Sergeant John Pine, says police will continue to concentrate on the issue, which is a problem in Southland.
It's definitely a causative factor in some of the crashes that have been occurring, and we're finding a wee bit of a creep again in driver error, poor decisions, inattentive. Although often we can't categorically say it's to do with a cell phone or a device, evidence tends to point they're distracted by something, and the cell phones are definitely being used by drivers out there.
Around a quarter of schools are charging parents for things they shouldn't. That's according to Hamilton teacher Norman Austin, who's travelling the country on a roadshow at the invitation of the PPTA to speak about the issue. He says it's an ongoing issue and schools and parents need to know what they are required to pay for.
I think it's probably twofold. One is that traditionally we have this myth that education in New Zealand is free, but there are some things that schools can charge for legally, such as extracurricular activities like sports and that kind of thing. But there's also this grey area that schools ask for money voluntarily, and with the voluntarily always comes with a kind of a marks around it to say, well, it's not really voluntary at all. In some ways it's almost compulsory, and there's a lot of pressure put on parents to actually pay that if they want their children to get the best they can from their local school. There's a kind of a pressure to pay it.
Why are you concerned about that?
Well, I think it's led on to communities and cities particularly getting divided between what they can charge, what one school can charge and what another can't, because of the kind of community that they come from. For example, we have schools that can't really charge almost a voluntary donation because the community is too poor to pay it. Whereas you've got other schools with a more captive socio-economic area that can charge a hang of a lot more and get a lot more money as well. So it's an issue of inequality as well, a big issue of inequality.
Now, in terms of the issue, do you think that it comes down to schools not knowing what they're doing, or do you think that there's a deliberate intent there?
I think it's a bit of both. I think there's a certain amount of ignorance about the legal legal permissions of what can actually be done. There is a circular put out by the Ministry of Education, was put out 13 years ago in 1998, 15 years ago actually, and there's still a lot of ignorance about it. A survey's been done by the PPDA, and in the survey of about 80 schools, it was found that at least 15 didn't even know of the circular's existence and the kind of things they could charge for. So there's a certain amount of ignorance about it, but also there's a certain amount, I guess, of rorting where schools are able to say, well, we've got a community that can afford to pay these things, therefore why not go for it? I guess many schools are in a bit of a bind as well, that they want to do the best they can for their students. They can't do that with the amount of government money they're getting, so therefore they have to ask for top-ups from the community, either from parents paying fees or from other sources of money, such as donations, grants, sponsorships, whatever you name it.
After the break, why Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt says he's encouraged about the future of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter. Welcome back. Discussions between the owners of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter and Meridian Energy around the pricing of a power supply agreement are still ongoing. Negotiations to bring down the price of a long-term power contract have been ongoing for 10 months. The contract was signed 6 years ago, but only recently came into effect. The smelter has previously said it needs prices to come down to be viable. New Zealand Aluminium Smelter's Acting General Manager Stu Hamilton says the smelter is still losing money and work is ongoing to make it viable. Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt recently had an informal discussion about the smelter with the Prime Minister, and says it was encouraging.
We had a lengthy discussion on the smelter, and without going into the confidential details, it was an expression of confidence in the future, and it was certainly heartening for me.
Now, that's not the only expression of confidence in the future that you've had around the future of Tiwai, is it?
No, Bill English contacted me very early in the morning on Saturday, and again we had a lengthy discussion of the details, what was happening, and again, without going into confidential details, his general attitude was that there was going to be a positive outcome for us. They are, although trying to keep the negotiations at arm's length, the government is very much in touch with what is going on, and of course they are involved in terms of the selling of electricity company shares, so they have a vested interest to ensure that there is stability over the Tiwai aluminium smelter issue.
Do you think we will see government intervention on it?
I think they're already deeply involved, and yes, I think they can indirectly, of course, put pressure on the electricity company to come to some agreement with the smelter.
Will Invercargill City Council be getting involved in terms of the smelter?
Yes, of course, and we've got a full-page advert prepared to go into all the main newspapers throughout the country, explaining that the smelter is not responsible for their high electricity bills and pointing out exactly what we believe the problem is.
Now, you held off on that campaign. How much longer do you plan to hold off on it?
Well, it depends a lot on how these negotiations are going. We don't want to come out of the corner in an aggressive frame of mind and then sabotage the talk. So long as there is positive discussion going on around the table, then we'll hold fire. But if we don't get the kind of positive outcome that we feel both New Zealand and Southland require, then yes, we'll come out fighting.
Tay Street traffic flows will be affected by detours over the coming weeks. While a new water main is laid in the city, there will be no right-hand turns off Tay Street to straight-through traffic for up to a fortnight, while Council continues its water main renewal work in Invercargill. Motorists travelling along Tay Street will be restricted to single lanes, but left-turning traffic won't be affected. Conlon and Devron Streets will be closed to straight-through traffic at Tay Street as works get underway today. Bus stops are being temporarily relocated and motorists are being encouraged to use other routes. A delegation of representatives from Invercargill City Council left the city today bound for Japan to re-sign a sister city agreement with Kumagaya. 7 people, including Mayor Tim Shadbolt, Deputy Mayor Darren Ludlow and local kaumatua Michael Skerritt, are taking part in the visit. In February, the Mayor of Kumagaya and other representatives visited Invercargill to re-sign the agreement, and this visit is reciprocating this. While in Kumagaya, the delegation will attend the sister city re-signing ceremony and will also visit a local school, meet with the Kumagaya International Friendship Association and experience Japanese culture. The two cities have now had a sister city agreement for 20 years. Free concerts designed for children have been pleasing crowds at Invercargill's Centre Stage Theatre over the past few days. Year 1 students from the Southern Institute of Technology's Bachelor of Contemporary Music performed in 10 one-hour shows to over 2,000 Southland primary and preschoolers over 3 days. The popular show was in its 11th year, and this year SIT audio and music students entertained with a mix of international and New Zealand songs to celebrate New Zealand Music Month. Today, students from several schools showed their appreciation for the performers and the spontaneously choreographed show. And that's it from news. Coming up in sport, more from the 2013 New Zealand Division 2 swimming competition from the news team. Good night.